Chapter 171. Gu Mengmeng used 7 days to recuperate. On the morning of the 8th day, the moment she opened her eyes, Gu Mengmeng forced herself to accept reality. Wasn't it just loving the wrong person? Crying for 7 days was already a good for nothing. It was not Gu Mengmeng's style to risk her life for a man who treated her as a tool. Clenching her teeth, Gu Mengmeng kept repeating in her heart, "I'm fine. I don't care. I can live a good life." Elvis noticed Gu Mengmeng's abnormality the moment he opened his eyes. This change was infinitely close to his ideal. But why was there a dull pain in his chest? Elvis hugged Gu Mengmeng's waist lightly and unknowingly pulled her into his arms again. He weighed her in his hands. She had slimmed down again. He frowned but did not know how to comfort her. "Elvis, can you bring me to the lake where we first met?" Gu Mengmeng opened her mouth. Elvis's expression froze and his brows formed a dead knot. He asked in a low voice, "Are you going to sink yourself to the bottom of the lake again?" Gu Mengmeng shook her head and smiled. "I won't be stupid for a man twice." Elvis looked at Gu Mengmeng doubtfully, not moving or saying a word. Gu Mengmeng saw that her credibility seemed to have been ruined by Elvis. She laughed at herself and said, "The last time I jumped into the lake, it was not to drown myself. I was just thinking that since I came from that lake, maybe I can go back from that lake." But reality proved that this idea was not reliable. That lake seemed to be a one-way entrance. To go back, I might have to find another exit. "Go back." Elvis repeated Gu Mengmeng's words in a low voice, but he only said one word before he felt as if someone was strangling his throat. Not to mention repeating Gu Mengmeng's words, even his breathing was not smooth. Gu Mengmeng was trying her best to pull herself out from her heartbroken emotions. She had already used up a lot of energy to stop herself from crying. She really did not have the mood to figure out Elvis's current thoughts. Gu Mengmeng looked down and twisted her fingers nonchalantly. "Since I can't go back for now, I have to think of a way to live more comfortably. Roasting fish and meat every day is not a solution. Even if I don't get sick of it, my body can't take it." Elvis recalled that the lake was very special because he met Gu Mengmeng there. But other than that, Elvis really could not think of anything else in the lake. Gu Mengmeng could not help but find it funny when she saw Elvis thinking so hard. This kind of brainstorming work was really not suitable for him. Every time he was thinking about a problem, his brows would furrow into a dead knot. Gu Mengmeng placed her little hand on Elvis's brows and said patiently, "I need to ingest salt to maintain my health. In the past few days, I had been feeling weak, which was a sign of a lack of salt. If I don't take in more salt, my condition will worsen, and I won't be able to survive this winter." Elvis immediately tensed up upon hearing that. Gu Mengmeng patted Elvis's shoulder and gestured for him to relax. Then she said, "When I jumped into the lake previously, I accidentally realized that the lake water was salty. I suspect that it was a salt lake. Bring me there to take a look. If that's really the case, then I can be saved." Elvis still had a lingering fear towards Gu Mengmeng's sudden jump into the lake, and the words she said to him before jumping into the lake. Elvis did not dare to take the risk of bringing her closer to that place, especially after knowing that it could be a passage for her to return to the other world. He could not let her near that place. So Elvis asked cautiously, "What does salt look like? Tell me, I'll go get it for you." Aside from the topic, trying to act pitiful, Susu had caught a cold. To someone who did not have a stockpile of chapters, the sudden notification of adding chapters was a huge blow. But for the sake of our Gu Mengmeng's better development, Susu had been pouring cup after cup of coffee into her stomach, trying her best to stay awake, so that she could write more chapters for her babies. "For the sake of my hard work, can you please give me your recommendation tickets every day?" Chapter 172. Gu Mengmeng raised her brows and looked at Elvis, asking, "Why? Are you planning to imprison me and not let me leave this cave for the rest of my life?" Elvis was taken aback by Gu Mengmeng's words and shook his head instinctively. Gu Mengmeng then smiled. "Then it's settled. I promise I won't jump into the lake this time. I didn't have the experience last time, and didn't know the water was so cold. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have had the guts to jump in." That was the truth. The water was still warm when Gu Mingming came, but after a few days, it had become extremely cold. It could be seen that winter was indeed coming, and there seemed to be no transition period. Elvis could not reject Gu Mingming in the end, but he was much more cautious this time. He carried Gu Mingming in his arms, and did not let her leave his side. Gu Mingming was also happy to be at ease. Without shoes, the ground was cold and hard, and moreover, she really did not want to jump into the lake. Being hugged by Elvis to keep her warm was pretty good. When they reached the lakeside again, Gu Mingming's eyes lit up immediately. F*******. This was her third time here. Why did she not realize that this was a salt lake the previous 2 times? Large pieces of salt crystals were hanging on the rock wall by the lakeside, but she did not realize it previously? Gu Mingming was extremely excited, pointing at a piece nearer to her. Elvis, hurry, go there. I want that white one. Seeing that Gu Mingming was interested in things other than Leah, Elvis felt slightly more at ease. Looking at the direction Gu Mingming was pointing at, he nodded his head, carrying Gu Mingming, and stepped on the huge rocks by the lakeside. With a few leaps he reached the rock wall. He held onto Gu Mingming with one hand, and held onto the protruding part of the rock wall with the other, hanging steadily in mid-air. Gu Mingming broke off a small piece of salt crystal, and licked it with her little tongue. A huge smile bloomed on Gu Mingming's face. That's right, it was what she wanted. Gu Mingming danced with joy, using all her strength to break off a large piece, and hugged it in her arms. She wanted to take more, but her hands could only hold too little now. If she used too much strength, there would be nothing left after the salt crystal was crushed. Looking at Gu Mingming's face that was wrinkled like a bun, Elvis asked in confusion, "What's wrong? Is it not what you want?" Gu Mingming shook her head and said, "This is what I want, but I can only take this much." Elvis looked at the large piece of what she called salt in her hands. It was about the size of a rabbit. If it was cooked, it was indeed a little too little. It was rare that Gu Mingming was in the mood and had an appetite, so Elvis naturally would not disappoint her. He said, "It's all right, let's take these back first, I'll help you get them later." Gu Mingming shook her head and said, "It's quite a long journey from here. Let's get enough in one go, so that we don't have to run back and forth." Elvis nodded. To him, whatever Gu Mingming said was right, so he said, "Then break off a few more and throw them on the shore. I will take them later." Gu Mingming's lips twitched. Throw it to the shore? If that happened, it would be smashed into pieces. If it got wet, it would be impossible to pick it up even if he wanted to. Sigh. He knew that he was here to look for salt. But why didn't he think of bringing a piece of animal skin with him when he left? I'm so stupid. Beast skin? Elvis's eyes lit up and he said to Gu Mingming, "Beast skin, I brought it." Aside from the topic, hoeing the crops in the middle of the afternoon, stockpiling the manuscript today. The sun sets on the mountain in the morning, stockpiling the manuscript today. Bright moonlight in front of my bed, stockpiling the manuscript today. Not knowing where the human face has gone, I must stockpile the manuscript today. An ancient poem that did not rhyme at all proved that the author had gone crazy. Chapter 173. Gu Mingming blinked her big innocent eyes at Elvis, sizing him up from head to toe. Damn it, he did not have anything on him other than that beast skin dress. Did he bring beast skin? Or did he hide it? Wait a minute. A bomb exploded in Gu Mingming's mind. Then she looked at Elvis's beast skin dress with a stiff face. F******. Leader, you can't be so hardcore, right? Damn it, I'm bringing this salt back to eat. But you want me to use your beast skin dress that does not contain any additives to wrap a certain important part of my body? How can I eat it when I go back to cook? Gu Mingming shook her head like a rattle drum. No, I can't use your beast skin dress. I will be traumatized by the salt. Elvis smiled dotingly. It's all right. After we get the salt, I'll turn into my original form and carry you back. I won't let anyone see my body. Gu Mingming was speechless, holding her forehead. That's not the problem, all right? Elvis did not understand, frowning slightly. Gu Mingming hugged the salt too tightly. Some of it had already crumbled in her hands. Gu Mingming looked at the crumbled salt in her hands and hurriedly said, "Let's go down first. I'll think of another way." Without a word, Elvis kicked off with force and jumped up like he was stepping on a spring bed. After a few consecutive jumps, he landed steadily at a distance of 1 meter away from the lake. He placed Gu Mingming down carefully and held onto her shoulders, saying, "Wait for me here, I'll help you get some more." Gu Mingming's body trembled as she looked at Elvis. "Wait for me here, I'll go get more for you." Gu Mingming nodded. She was very clear that with her small body, she would only be a burden if she went over, so she might as well let Elvis handle it. Elvis held onto Gu Mingming's shoulders tighter, staring into her eyes. "Promise me, don't go near the lake." Gu Mingming knew that Elvis was scared by her previously, so she smiled. "Don't worry, I treasure my life more than anyone else. I don't have any inclination to commit suicide or harm myself." Elvis was still not at ease. But this was the first time Gu Mingming was interested in something in the past few days. He could see that she was trying her best to divert her attention with other things, so that she would not have time to think about Leah. As long as she could not be sad, he was willing to do all the things for her. As Elvis walked towards the cliff by the lake, he kept an eye on Gu Mingming's movements. Seeing that she only plucked a few big leaves strenuously at the side, and then started to wrap the salt carefully, he then leaped up the cliff with a peace of mind. Not long after, Elvis had already made more than 10 trips. Gu Mingming looked at the small mountain of salt crystals in front of her, and smiled from the bottom of her heart, for the first time in a few days. Together with Elvis, she used leaves to wrap the salt, then tied them up with thinner vines, and hung them around Elvis's neck like he was wearing a scarf. Elvis hung a bag of salt around his neck, and carried a smaller Gu Mingming in his arms. It felt like a boss of a grocery store bringing his daughter home to buy groceries. Gu Mingming could not help but laugh at this thought. She weighed the sizable amount of salt in her hands, and suddenly felt like she was a nouveau riche who suddenly had a huge sum of money. Elvis did not know what these white crystals were used for, but looking at Gu Mingming's smile, he felt that these crystals were really precious. He wanted to collect all the crystals by the lake for her. As long as she could smile like this, it would be enough. Aside from the topic, I saw that some little babies left messages saying that their messages had been deleted. Susu was really innocent in this matter. As a child raised by a stepmother who did not even have a backer in the bookstore, the messages she posted in the QQ group had been deleted a few times. Chapter 174. Elvis called Sandy over to accompany Gu Mingming while he returned to the lakeside, wanting to help Gu Mingming get more salt crystals. But sometimes, when Elvis appeared in front of Gu Mingming with his head hung low like a child who had done something wrong, Gu Mingming deeply experienced for the first time in her life what was called a pig teammate. Looking at Elvis's dejected look, Gu Mingming felt like laughing for some reason. She really wanted to ask, "Elvis, are you actually a pig in wolf skin?" "Xiao Meng, don't be angry. I know where to find the salt crystals you want. Although it's a little far, I can definitely bring a lot of them back for you." Gu Mingming waved her hands and said, "Tell me first, how many salt crystals did you get into the water from the lakeside?" Elvis cleared his throat and used his hands to form a shape about the size of a rice bowl. He then turned his head away, not daring to look at Gu Mingming in the eyes. Gu Mingming's lips curled to one side. This Elvis was really not good at lying. If it was just this little bit, why would he be so nervous? Gu Mingming did not expose him, nor did she reply. She just crossed her arms in front of her chest and looked at Elvis with her chin raised. Then, she saw Elvis quietly expand the area between his hands. From the size of a bowl, it became the size of a wash basin. He then kept glancing at Gu Mingming from the corner of his eyes. He looked like a husky that had torn down a house. Gu Mingming facepalmed. She no longer doubted that huskies and wolves were close relatives. Gu Mingming patted Elvis's shoulder and said, "You have successfully lowered the overall intelligence level of the wolf tribe. If you meet other wolves in the future, hide a little. I'm afraid they will want to bite you to death." Elvis did not really understand Gu Mingming's words. After all, he had never seen a wolf tribe that could defeat him. But he would just treat it as a word of concern. Elvis thought about it and chuckled. He then asked in a probing manner, "About the salt crystals, you're not angry?" Gu Mingming shook her head and said, "I think the salt crystals there are enough to last our entire tribe for 2 to 3 years. It won't affect you much if you get rid of them. Moreover, even if there aren't any salt crystals, I have a way to extract them from the lake. It's just that using ready-made salt crystals would save me a lot of trouble." Elvis then heaved a sigh of relief and understood why Gu Mingming insisted on going over by herself in the morning. Elvis's ears twitched as he heard someone coming from the cave. He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Looking at Gu Mingming, Elvis said, "Then you and Sandy can play first. I will go out for a while and be back soon." Gu Mingming did not take it to heart. After all, Elvis was the leader of the tribe. He could not possibly revolve around her every day, right? She nodded and continued to help Sandy spread the salt evenly on the fish that Bode had prepared. Then they strung the fish with vines one by one. 10 fish were strung on one vine and placed at the side. Because the fish were too fat, it was impossible for the 2 females to lift them up. Elvis walked out of the cave and saw that it was indeed Leah. "She's much better today." Elvis did not raise any questions and just stated it directly. Lee's expression was indifferent. Even though he tried very hard to maintain his usual smile, his sunken eye sockets and haggard face revealed his torment. With regards to the messenger of the beast deity, all his plans were correct, but there was a very important premise, and that was that he must never truly fall in love with this messenger of the beast deity. But this important premise had already been shattered by Gu Mingming's daddy Leah, when he was defenseless. Aside from the topic, regarding the issue of giving Gu Mingming a cheat, sometimes, I really don't know what everyone's standards are. My setting is that Gu Mingming is an ordinary first-year female student who accidentally transmigrated. So in the novel, I tried my best to avoid using an unrealistic cheat, referring to the early stages. But there were still people who told me that Gu Mingming's protagonist aura was too strong, as if she did not need to learn anything. And there were also some readers who told me that Gu Mingming was too weak. Why did she not use the cheat? Alright, what I want to say is that I will definitely activate my gold finger, but I won't activate it for no reason. Let me reveal a small clue. The activation of the cheat is related to mating. Then it's almost time for mating, probably. Who knows how many more days? Chapter 175. Leah did not reply. He just passed the bag of leaves tied by a bunch of vines to Elvis, then passed a lot of dried ginger to Elvis, saying, "She always likes some strange things that no one would pick up even if they were thrown on the ground, but she always treats them like treasures." Elvis took over the things from Lee's hands, placed it next to his nose and sniffed it. Then he knew that the bag of leaves contained salt crystals. Looking at the method of wrapping it, it was clearly the same as Gu Mingming's. That meant that when they went to the lake to retrieve the salt crystals in the morning, Leah was also there. But he did not realize it. Elvis could now understand what Leah meant when he said, "The beast world is so dangerous. A male cannot protect Gu Mingming." If the one following him today was not Leah, but someone else, then Elvis did not voice out his worries. He just asked, "Should I tell her? Did you send it over?" Leah shook his head, smiling bitterly. Based on her character, if she knew that I brought it over, I'm afraid she would not accept it. Elvis was silent. He could not deny it. Leah understood Gu Mingming much more thoroughly than him. Most of the time, he did not know what Gu Mingming was thinking about. He could only do as she said. But Leah could see through her thoughts before she opened her mouth. Perhaps, this was the reason why he lost to Leah in Xiaoming's heart. Elvis nodded, agreeing to it, then carried the things and turned to enter the cave. Leah raised his hand, wanting to stop Elvis, but when the words were at the tip of his tongue, he realized that he did not have the right to instruct him. Looking at his blood-stained and dirty fingers from digging the yellow roots all over the mountain, Leah smiled bitterly, turning to walk back into the mountain. As long as she was happy. So what if he dug his hands till they were mush? Elvis returned to the cave, piling the things that Leah brought over at the side, together with the salt crystal bags they brought back in the morning. Then, he sat beside Gu Mingming, watching her and Sandy string up the fishes while chatting and laughing. Bode had brought a total of over 30 fishes, and they were all cleaned, so it was not too strenuous to string them up. After Gu Mingming settled everything, she patted Elvis's arm and asked, "In your territory, would there be wild animals that would steal our food?" Elvis shook his head. The pressure of the orcs is enough to intimidate normal wild animals. They would not dare to go near the tribe. Gu Mingming nodded, then asked again, "Would there be other orcs that would steal of our food?" Elvis was taken aback for a moment. Then he smiled and rubbed Gu Mingming's furry little head. "The males of Saint Nazir will not snatch the food of their own females. As for the males from other clans, unless they destroy the entire Saint Nazir, they should not be able to enter this cave to take your water shuttle." Don't worry. Nobody knew what Gu Mingming was doing. Sandy helped out for half a day, only thinking that it was a new game that Gu Mingming had invented. After all, in this boring era, Sandy was tired of throwing a stone and picking it up after playing it for a few years. Compared to those, this game of stringing up the water shuttles was already considered much more fun. Digression. Chapter 176. How long will this take? Sandy tilted her head and asked. Gu Mingming smacked her lips and said, "I don't know either. It depends on the air-drying situation." Sandy did not know what air-drying situation was, but it looked like it would take a long time, so she did not have the desire to continue waiting. She pulled Gu Mingming and said, "Our water shuttles are all used up. Why don't we ask Bode and the rest to get some more, and we can continue to wear them?" Gu Mingming shook her head and rejected Sandy's suggestion. She pointed at the 30 big fishes hanging on the tree and said, "Although this is delicious, we can't just eat it for the entire winter." Sandy was stunned and her clear big eyes were instantly filled with the colors of a fangirl. Her saliva was about to drip down uncontrollably. She pulled Gu Mingming's arm and pointed at the fish on the tree excitedly, asking, "Edible? Edible?" Gu Mingming smiled and nodded. "Yeah, this will not go bad easily after being dried in the shade. Before winter, ask Bode to take 2 skewers and leave 1 for me. It's quite enjoyable to eat fish occasionally during winter." Elvis's expression was rather solemn. He took a step forward and held onto Gu Mingming's shoulders. Accommodating her height, he looked into her eyes and asked, "As long as we hang it like this, the food won't go bad?" Gu Mingming smiled and said, "Of course not. It has to be marinated with salt first and then dried in the shade. Although it's not as effective as preservatives, but if it's like what you said, when the snow seals the mountain during winter, and we can't even leave the cave, then it's like a natural refrigerator. If we handle it this way, it shouldn't be a problem to store it for the entire winter." Elvis was overjoyed. He carried Gu Mingming and howled at the sky. Gu Mingming did not know what message he was sending. She only knew that after a while, all the males in the tribe gathered in front of Elvis's cave and looked at Gu Mingming with sparkling eyes. "Xiao Meng, what kind of food can be stored using this method? Can you tell everyone?" Elvis carried Gu Mingming so that she would not be drowned in the crowd of tall males. And males had very sensitive ears. Even if Gu Mingming's voice was not as loud as Elvis's, they could still hear her clearly. Ever since Gu Mingming broke up with her boyfriend, she had almost never shown her face in front of the public. This long-lost public gaze still made her feel a little awkward. She instinctively hid in Elvis's arms and revealed half of her face, saying, "Any normal food is fine, but I have never pickled those tigers and leopards that you guys usually eat. I'm not sure, but in theory it should be fine." Elvis shook his head and said, "I'm not sure, but in theory it should be fine." The moment Gu Mingming finished speaking, a deafening cheer erupted from the beast horde. No matter how many times she had heard it, the sight of hundreds of beasts roaring at the sky still gave Gu Mingming a fright. Shrinking into Elvis's arms, Gu Mingming was like a frightened kitten. She was protected gently by Elvis as he patted her back slowly. After the males roared, they scattered in all directions to search for food that they could use. At this moment, a familiar person walked in front of Gu Mingming slowly. He smiled bashfully and raised his hand, saying, "Long time no see, Gu Mingming." Gu Mingming then noticed Barit, The last time she saw him was at the platform of the deity's punishment. Chapter 177. Barit clenched his fists and arched his arms, his firm muscles bulging. He displayed his masculine image perfectly, just like a walking hormone. Gu Mingming nodded and said, "Looks good, then I'm relieved. Hurry and go look for prey with the rest. If you're late, they'll snatch it all away." Barit was not in a hurry. He stood at the same spot and asked Gu Mingming, "You saved me on the platform of the deity's punishment. To repay you, I'll be responsible for your food this winter. What do you like to eat? Tell me, I'll prepare it for you." This matter, it was Li's suggestion. And at that time, she had not lost Leah yet. Gu Mingming could not maintain the smile on her face, and her nose felt sour. Gu Mingming despised herself for being so useless in her heart. She rubbed her nose and pretended to think, lifting her little face. She rolled her eyes to get rid of the mist in her eyes and forced herself to smile and answer, "Actually, there's no need. You helped me and I helped you. So we're even now. Elvis will help me prepare my food. You just have to take care of yourself." Barit looked at Elvis, his gaze filled with sincerity and determination, saying, "Elvis, please let me enter your cave this winter." Elvis frowned and remained silent for a moment before saying, "I'll prepare sufficient food for Xiaomeng. And she won't agree to it." Barit looked at Gu Mingming, then back at Elvis, saying, "Leader, please allow me to enter your cave this winter." Elvis frowned and squinted his eyes at Barit, saying, "Are you reminding me not to forget myself and my identity?" Barit remained silent, neither admitting nor denying it. Elvis's lips curled up, and he tilted his neck to both sides, looking like he was warming up. Gu Mingming completely did not understand what they were talking about, but the smell of gunpowder was too strong. No matter how slow she was, it was impossible for her not to sense it. Barit had just come down from the platform of the deity's punishment a few days ago. A 3-day trip outside the gates of hell was not a joke. Elvis also injured his leg for some reason previously. Why were the two disabled patients still so angry? Gu Mingming patted Elvis's shoulder, attracting his attention to her. She then smiled lightly, saying, "Can you bring me around? I don't want to eat meat all winter. I'll get sick of it." Elvis glanced at Barit from the corner of his eyes, and did not say anything, only nodding his head. Gu Mingming then turned to Barit and said, "In the past, I didn't understand the rules of the beast world, and thought that this place was the same as our world, where men and women could be friends. But now I knew that apart from mating, it was impossible for a male and a female to coexist. I don't want to find a partner here, so don't waste your time on me. Go prepare your own food, and don't come looking for me again." After Gu Mingming finished speaking, she wrapped her arms around Elvis's neck, signaling him to leave. Elvis did not stay for a second longer, as he carried Gu Mingming out of the tribe. Barit was not dejected by Gu Mingming's words. He knew about Li's situation. Although he could not understand Gu Mingming's view on love, he would not try to change it. He was different from Leah. Mating with Gu Mingming was his dream, but he did not dare to hope that it would come true. As long as he could protect her from afar and help her with some trivial matters, he would be satisfied. So he maintained a certain distance and followed behind Elvis silently. There was no disappointment, no hesitation, no doubt, only a determined gaze and a primitive instinct to be loyal to himself. Aside from the topic. Chapter 178. Elvis knew that Barit was following behind him, but he did not expose or stop him. It was always better to have one more person protecting Gu Mingming. If she met with an extremely serious danger, it would be so lucky to have a reliable person to bring Gu Mingming away when she was fighting for her life. Gu Mingming did not have sharp senses like Elvis, so she just nestled in Elvis's arms and looked around. Sometimes she asked Elvis to head east, and at other times, she wandered around aimlessly. Elvis did not feel annoyed, and let her run around the mountain freely. Actually, there seemed to be quite a lot of edible things here, but Gu Mingming did not know much, so she did not dare to try, until she found a familiar sea of flowers. Potato blossoms. who said that watching Korean dramas was useless. Gu Mingming had seen this kind of flower in a Korean drama, The Best Love, a long time ago. It was probably because the female lead promised to make curry for the male lead. But she forgot why she did not come. The potato that the male lead bought had already sprouted, and in the end, only a long green bud grew out. But it did not bloom. Until one day, the male lead saw a painting of a potato field, and the field was filled with such buds. An old man told the male lead that potatoes looked like this when they bloomed. The male lead suddenly realized that the potato in his house had bloomed long ago, and then he ran off to look for the female lead in a melodramatic manner. But he could not remember it clearly. Gu Mingming only remembered complaining to her roommates about this point. Who the hell would hang a painting of a potato field as a decoration? It was also because this point was too shocking, so she remembered this scene especially clearly. It was just that Gu Mingming, who was hugging a watermelon and lying on the sofa to watch dramas, really did not expect that this point would actually improve her meals one day in the future. Gu Mingming patted Elvis's shoulder excitedly. That. With the previous experience with the salt crystals, Elvis was very careful this time. He did not know what Gu Mingming wanted these grasses for. But his usual principle was, don't ask, just do it. So Elvis carefully walked to the middle of the potato blossoms, then asked, can I just bring these grasses back? Can I just pluck them out? Gu Mingming stretched out her index finger and shook it in front of Elvis like a pendulum. She made a no expression and said, I don't want this grass. I want the thing underneath it. Elvis gently pushed the grass aside and realized that there was only soil underneath. What did Gu Mingming want the soil for? Could it be that dirt could be eaten? Gu Mingming patted Elvis's arm, gesturing for him to put her down. Elvis did as she was told. Gu Mingming rolled up her sleeves and separated her legs to shoulder width. She held onto a potato pudding with both hands and pulled it up with all her might. F***ck me. The skin on his hand was torn, so painful. Gu Mingming looked at Elvis with her bloodshot hands, tears welling up in her eyes due to the pain in her palms. Her pitiful look melted Elvis's heart. He pulled Gu Mingming into his arms and looked at the wound on her palms. The wound was not deep, but to Elvis it was a ghastly sight. Elvis held Gu Mingming's little hand gently and brought it to his lips. Then, he actually stuck out his tongue and started to lick Gu Mingming's palm carefully. A wave of numbness spread from Gu Mingming's palm to every corner of her body. Gu Mingming stared in bewilderment and stuttered. What are you doing? Aside from the topic. Thank you QQ Reader Dream for your tips and concern. I will take care of my body. The all-purpose plain water was already prepared, and he was drinking it every day. Chapter 179. Elvis did not answer Gu Mingming's question, and just focused on licking her little hand, until he licked every single scar clean. He then placed her little hand by his lips reluctantly and kissed it. Only then did he answer. This way, the wounds won't get inflamed and will heal faster. Gu Mingming's eyes widened. Gu Mingming's face was flushed red, and she could not say a word. Previously, Leah had also licked the blood from her nose, but as the distance was too close, she could not see anything clearly, and the entire process was transmitted through her skin. But it was different this time. When Elvis was licking her little hand, she maintained a VVIP 3D perspective, and watched as Elvis's tongue licked her little hand over and over again, as if she was watching a live broadcast. Who could understand the feeling of touching an electric switch for 5 minutes? Elvis looked at Gu Mingming's flushed face, and recalled the scene when Leah hugged her in the stream. That day, he watched everything quietly from afar, and tried his best to control himself from rushing over. Today, he finally had such a chance to taste her wonderful taste. Although they did not have a proper title, she could only rely on him, trust him and let him take care of her. This was enough happiness. Elvis kissed Gu Mingming's little face, and then placed her down on a smooth big rock for her to sit properly. Then he pointed at the grass that Gu Mingming wanted to pluck, but did not manage to. Just pluck it up? Gu Mingming nodded her head blankly. She had not recovered from Elvis's actions just now. Now, as long as Elvis looked at her, she would feel her face burning, and she did not know where to place her hands. Elvis liked Gu Mingming's childish look. Did it mean that she finally saw him as an ordinary male, when she was shy because of his actions? Elvis was in a good mood, and could do his work with ease. He grabbed the handful of grass, and pulled out a bunch of potatoes that were buried underground without much effort. Elvis looked at the string of black and swarthy things in shock. He placed it at the tip of his nose and sniffed it. It smelled like dirt. Puzzled, he brought the string of things in front of Gu Mingming and asked, "The thing below you mentioned is this?" Gu Mingming was still in a daze until Elvis patted her head lightly. She then snapped back to reality. Yes, that's it. This is called potato. It's a divine dish that goes with everything. It's delicious and can help with hunger. Most importantly, it's easy to store. You can just pile it up in the cave, and it won't go bad easily. Elvis looked at the fist-sized fruit skeptically. He casually plucked one off, and threw it into his mouth without even washing it. He chewed on it with a few crunching sounds. Along with Elvis's twisted expression, Gu Mingming's laughter reverberated throughout the entire sea of flowers. Ha ha! Hurry up and show your true form. You're a husky, aren't you? How can a wolf be as stupid as you? Ha ha! I'm dying of laughter. Gu Mingming clutched her stomach and rolled around in laughter. Seeing her rare smile, Elvis suddenly felt that the strange taste in his mouth was not so unbearable anymore. Chapter 180. When Gu Mingming was done laughing, she pushed herself up with both hands and jumped down from the huge rock. Before her feet touched the ground, Elvis caught her and held her in his arms firmly. "The ground is cold, be careful." Gu Mingming's heart warmed and she responded with a yeah. She took the potatoes from Elvis's hands and only realized when she placed them in her hands. Was this really a potato? It was almost as big as a dragon fruit. Weighing it in her hands, this potato was at least 1 caddy. Then the string of potatoes in Elvis's hands. Damn, she was rich. As long as she plucked this patch of potatoes, it would be enough for the entire Saint Nazaire tribe to eat for a year. Of course, Gu Mingming neglected a very important problem. Many males in Saint Nazaire, like Elvis, were carnivorous beasts. Potatoes were really not attractive to them. Of course, if it was to perform for the females, they could even eat 1 caddy of soil, let alone potatoes. But to be used as food, it was not a good choice. But Gu Mingming did not think about these things at the moment. She was immersed in her own fantasy world. Potato shreds, potato strips, braised potatoes, potato stew with beef. No, she did not see a cow after coming here. Then potato stew with tiger? It was quite scary just thinking about it. A tiger's head was placed in the middle of a pot of potatoes. Damn, the tiger was looking at her. No matter how she thought about it, she looked more like the food. No, it was too heavy taste. Indeed, she could not get used to it. Elvis watched Gu Mingming's expression change every now and then. He could not help but recall the first time he met her. She was also like this. He did not know what she was thinking, but that weird expression made him want to smile. Hugging and kissing Gu Mingming, Elvis asked, "What are you thinking about? Tell me about it." Gu Mingming shrugged her shoulders and said, "I was thinking, how are we going to bring these potatoes back?" Elvis tilted his head slightly and said, "Someone helped us. We will take as much as you want." Gu Mingming tilted her head with a face full of question marks. Elvis called out to the people behind him in a low voice, and a few figures popped out from the forest far away. They quickly arrived in front of Gu Mingming and Elvis. Gu Mingming took a look. They were all familiar faces. "Barit, Colin, Oakley? Why are you guys here?" Gu Mingming asked with a smile. Colin scratched his head innocently and said, "I saw Barit following you out of the tribe. I thought you might need help, so I followed." Oakley took half a step forward and smiled at Gu Mingming. "I haven't seen you for a few days. I was afraid that you would forget about me if I didn't come out any longer. So I followed you here." Gu Mingming nodded. Barit did not say a word and just stood there quietly, his gaze never leaving Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming shook her head with a smile and said helplessly, "Since you're already here, why are you sneaking around? Can't you just come out and say hello?" Oakley pointed at Colin and said, "He pulled me and didn't let me come out." Colin immediately pointed at Barit and said, "I wanted to come out at first, but Barit stopped me. He said that you would not be happy to see us." With that, Colin turned his head to look at Barit and said, "Why are you lying?" Gu Mingming was clearly not unhappy. Barit was speechless. He sighed helplessly and said, "How many of these grasses do you want to pluck? I'll help you." Gu Mingming chuckled and said, "Pluck as many as you can. These are our rations for the winter." Aside from the topic. Chapter 181. Once they heard that it was Gu Mingming's food, how could the males not work hard? Barit, Colin and Oakley had pulled out at least 200 caddies of potatoes. Gu Mingming did not know if it was enough for the entire tribe to eat, but even if she ate potatoes for 3 meals in the entire winter, she reckoned that she would not be able to finish them by next spring. But even so, Elvis still felt that it was too little, so he handed Gu Mingming over to Oakley and plucked more himself. Gu Mingming looked at the huge string of potatoes, which she estimated to be at least 250 caddies, and felt deeply ashamed. Damn, the power output was indeed not on the same level. The barbells she lifted in the gym previously were all wasted training. So many fighting moves could only be used to bully a coward like Nina. In the end, Colin transformed back to his original form and hung the 200 caddies of potatoes on his body. He did not feel that it was heavy, but it was a little cramped when he walked, as he was afraid that Gu Mingming's food would fall onto the ground. So the scene of this 2-story tall black bear carrying the potatoes carefully and taking small steps was even more comical than a circus performance. Gu Mingming could not help but laugh out loud, causing Colin to look back, and a potato fell from his head. Barit caught the potato quickly and threw it towards Colin. Colin instinctively opened his mouth to catch it and chewed on it. This time, Gu Mingming laughed even harder, rocking back and forth in Elvis's arms. She said breathlessly, "Ha ha ha, Elvis, is this called a crooked stick has a crooked shadow? With you leading the way, will the entire tribe eat raw potatoes like you? Ha ha ha." Elvis actually wanted to explain that firstly, they had never eaten this before. Secondly, before they met Gu Mingming, they had always eaten raw food. But strangely, Colin's reaction after eating the raw potatoes was different from Elvis. He smacked his lips, as if he wanted more. But thinking that it was Gu Mingming's food, he held back and did not eat another one. When the group returned to St. Nazaire, it was already afternoon. They returned to Elvis's territory in a noisy manner, and Barit and the other 2 consciously stopped at the outskirts of the territory. Gu Mingming smiled and waved. "What are you waiting for? Come in." The 3 of them then nodded and followed Gu Mingming into Elvis's territory. However, before he reached the entrance of the cave, he heard loud noises. Gu Mingming frowned and looked towards the source of the sound. She saw 2 females fighting each other. One of them seemed to be Sandy and the other, Nina. F***ck, are they bullying me at my doorstep? It just so happens that I have nowhere to vent my anger. Gu Mingming jumped down from Elvis's arms and ran straight towards Sandy and Nina. Nina had suffered so many losses in Gu Mingming's hands. Seeing Gu Mingming charging over in such a manner, she was so frightened that she immediately let go of Sandy and jumped back. She reached out a hand to block Gu Mingming. You can't bully me just because you have more people." Gu Mingming laughed coldly. "Didn't you send yourself here to be bullied by me?" Nina raised her head and said in what she thought was a noble manner, "That's not it. I'm here to look for my mail." Gu Mingming smiled embarrassedly. "You're here to look for your mail? Is your mail Elvis?" Aside from the topic, I know everyone hates Nina and I hate her too. But she could not die for now. She still had to court death. Chapter 182. My mail is not Elvis, it's Leah. Nina raised her head even higher and looked at Gu Mingming with a provocative gaze, as if she was the victor. Actually, Nina's gaze was not considered provocative because her eyes were too small and Gu Mingming could not see through her gaze at all. But at this moment, no matter what her gaze was, it looked like a provocation. Gu Mingming felt a sharp pain in her heart when she heard that. Ha! One slash to the throat, fast, accurate and ruthless. Gu Mengmeng clenched her teeth and looked at Nina coldly. I wanted to hit you the previous time, but Leah stopped me. Now that you've sent yourself to me, let's settle our old and new debts together. With that, Gu Mengmeng pounced towards Nina. Nina shouted at the top of her lungs while dodging. Leah! Where are you? Come out and take a look. This is Gu Mengmeng's real face. She is chasing after your female and hitting her. Come and save me. The more Nina shouted, the redder Gu Mengmeng's eyes became. Look all you want. Did she still care what a man who treated her as a tool would think of her? Gu Mengmeng feinted and dodged left and right, successfully blocking Nina, who was in a panic. She leaped up and rode on Nina's body, slapping her left and right continuously. Gu Mengmeng slapped her more than 10 times until her hand hurt, but she still refused to stop. Just as the slap that was raised high up was about to land again, Gu Mengmeng's wrist was clamped down by a force. Gu Mengmeng looked towards the direction of that force, and her entire head of silver hair stung her eyes. Gu Mengmeng laughed coldly and turned her head to the other side. She looked at Elvis, who had already arrived beside her and was grabbing onto Lee's wrist. Trespassing into someone else's territory without permission. How should we deal with it? Elvis did not use too much strength to hold onto Lee's hand, but the strong pressure emitted from his body was already a clear warning. Elvis's voice was cold and without a trace of warmth. He said, "Let go." Leah acted as if he did not hear Elvis's warning as he stared straight at Gu Mengmeng with his long and narrow eyes. His thin lips opened slightly, and he replied slowly, "Trespassing into someone else's territory without permission should be treated as an intruder and chased away. If necessary, you can bite and kill. However, I'm a witch doctor. I'm not bound by this rule." Gu Mengmeng ignored Leah and tried to retract her hand, but Leah tightened his grip. His brows were tightly furrowed. He just wanted her to take another look at him. Just one look would do. But in the end, she was still heartless. She kept turning her face to the side, not even willing to give him a glimpse out of the corner of her eye. Gu Mengmeng sat on Nina and stood up. She kicked Nina out of the blue and said, "Bring your female out of here, or else I will kill you." Leah did not look at Nina, who was rolling and crawling on the ground. He only asked gently, as if he was whispering sweet nothings to her. "How do I kill her?" Gu Mengmeng sneered. "How about digging out my heart?" "Ah, I forgot, you don't have a heart." Leah lowered his head to look at his left chest that was throbbing in pain. He smiled bitterly. "Heartless? If there really isn't, that's fine too." Gu Mengmeng pulled her hand back with all her might, even at the risk of breaking her wrist. She struggled while saying, "Don't touch me with your dirty hands. I feel disgusted." In the end, Leah still let go. It was not because of Gu Mengmeng's words, but because she would get hurt if she struggled like that. At that time, he could look on coldly as Quentin almost strangled her to death. But now he could not bear to even injure his wrist. Chapter 183. Gu Mengmeng didn't even look back as she turned and walked into the cave. Nina scrambled up and wanted to pounce on Leah, but she was so scared by Lee's cold stare that she didn't dare to move. Her mouth was full of blood, and she couldn't even speak properly. She mumbled, "You haven't been back for a few days, and I came to look for you because I was worried about you." Who knew that Gu Mengmeng would be so barbaric and hit me the moment she came? Look at my face, how badly did she hit me? "Leah, you have to help me." Leah didn't say anything, but Elvis spoke up. "You want to touch my female in my territory? Do you think I'm dead?" But Nina wanted to explain, but Elvis couldn't be bothered to talk to her. He just said, "If you don't want to be chased away before winter, don't appear in front of Xiaomeng again. Or else." Elvis didn't finish his sentence. He just stretched out one hand and transformed it into a wolf's claw. He hammered the ground, creating a huge pit. Nina was so scared that she didn't dare to speak and just stood at the side, trembling. Gu Mengmeng's sobbing and Sandy's voice could be heard from the cave. Elvis looked at Leah with a frown and asked, "Why did you suddenly appear?" Leah lowered his head and looked at his own hand. He muttered to himself, "Her palm is injured. If she continues to hit it, it will bleed. It must be very painful." Elvis sighed. "Actually, He noticed the red mark on Gu Mingming's palm, but he also knew how hard it was for Gu Mingming to hold it in for the entire day. She pretended to be cheerful and laughed out loud over just a small matter. She laughed so hard that it made one's heart ache. He would rather she let it out like this. It was better than holding it in. So even though he knew that her palm was injured when she was plucking the grass today, he didn't stop her from harming herself. Elvis sighed and didn't say anything else. He turned and entered the cave. Seeing that Elvis had entered, Sandy tactfully retreated out of the room. Elvis hugged Gu Mingming in his arms and spread open her hand. His heart ached, but he couldn't bear to blame her. Gu Mingming wiped her tears and tried to cover it up. "There's sand in my eyes. It hurts a little." Elvis hugged Gu Mingming and placed her on his chest. He said gently, "The sand is in your eyes. It must be very painful, right? It's good to cry a little. Cry the sand out, and you won't be in pain anymore." Gu Mingming's tears, which she had finally stopped, started flowing again. She hugged onto Elvis's waist tightly and sobbed silently. When she was tired from crying, she directly fell asleep in Elvis's arms. When Gu Mingming woke up, it was already nighttime. Balder took Sandy back. Berit and the other two were still standing outside the cave, staring at the pile of potatoes on the ground. Gu Mingming felt a little embarrassed. She had asked him for help, but she only cared about tearing her love rival apart, leaving him hanging there for half a day. Just when she was thinking of how to speak without awkwardness, Colin scratched his head and stood out. He asked in embarrassment, "Gu Mingming, can I pluck some of this tomorrow?" Gu Mingming was taken aback for a moment before smiling. "You like it?" Colin nodded seriously, and then promised, "I'll just pick a little to taste, is that okay?" Berit punched Colin from behind and said, "You're so promising. Snatching food from a female?" Gu Mingming was teased by the two of them, and her awkward mood dissipated. She waved her hands and said, "Aren't there some ready-made? Just eat it." Aside from the topic. Chapter 184. Colin was still a little embarrassed and shook his head. "These are your food, I can't eat them, I have to leave them for you." Gu Mingming smiled. "How much can you eat? This is at least 100 kilograms, can you eat all of them?" Colin nodded his head seriously and answered, "Yes." "Uft." Gu Mingming could not hold it in and laughed out again. She said helplessly, "Then you can eat all of them and accompany me to pick new ones tomorrow." Colin thought for a while but did not do that. He said in a silly manner, "Then I will wait until I pick new ones for you tomorrow before eating these old ones." Gu Mingming did not force Colin any further. The beast world had its own code of conduct. If she kept forcing Colin, and he really ate these things, he might be laughed at by his fellow tribesmen. This would be a stain on his future partner. Gu Mingming did not force Colin any further. Gu Mingming said, "Everyone has been busy the whole day. You haven't eaten yet, right? It's just that it's so late. I don't know if we can still hunt." Elvis placed one hand on Gu Mingming's shoulder and smiled gently. "What do you want to eat? I will find it for you." Gu Mingming thought for a while, and said she wanted to eat bird eggs. This suggestion stunned Elvis and the rest. That thing was delicious? But since it was Gu Mingming who said it, there was naturally no reason for him to object. However, Elvis was not as skilled as Berit and Oakley when it came to climbing trees. Hence, the two of them accepted this task and transformed into a leopard and a lynx, disappearing into the night with a few leaps. Colin stayed behind to accompany Gu Mingming in processing the potatoes, while Elvis went to hunt for some large meat. He knew Gu Mingming was timid and did not dare to eat many things, so he processed them outside in advance and only brought back pieces of meat. Without a male's sharp sense of smell, Gu Mingming would not know what kind of animal it was. Of course, Gu Mingming also wisely chose not to ask. The stone pot was placed on the fire, and Gu Mingming asked Elvis to cut the meat into smaller pieces, then put them into the pot with the peeled potato pieces to cook. Gu Mingming wrapped the dozen over bird eggs that Berit and Oakley brought back with mud, and placed them outside the fire to simmer. When the meat was almost done, Gu Mingming used her fingernails to scrape some salt crystals into the pot, and stirred it with her long chopsticks. Immediately, the fragrance wafted out. There were various cutlery that Elvis had made according to Gu Mingming's description at home, but it was rather comical to ask males who ate raw food to use chopsticks. Gu Mingming did not expect everyone to be a gentleman, like the people in the civilized world. She simply picked up a few large pieces of meat and placed them on a thin plate made out of stones. She distributed them to everyone so that they could directly grab onto the meat and eat as freely as they wanted. Actually, according to the appetites of the males in the beast world, this pot of food was only enough for one person to fill their stomachs, much less for 5 people to share. So actually, everyone was just accompanying Gu Mingming to eat. Oakley said as he ate. I heard that the water shuttles you hung there are in preparation for winter? Gu Mingming nodded. Yeah, marinating it like this will prevent it from spoiling easily. Oakley continued. Today the males in the tribe have hunted quite a number of things, and they have all been cleaned and cut into pieces according to Elvis's request. I'll send them to you tomorrow for you to marinate. Gu Mingming was taken aback. Ah, you want me to marinate the entire tribe's food to survive the winter alone? Aside from the topic, she finally finished writing the part that needed to be updated. These few chapters did not talk about feelings as winter was coming, and the most important thing now was to store food. Chapter 185. Oakley was also taken aback. Then he shook his head and said, Of course not. You just have to marinate your own food. Gu Mingming tilted her head and asked, Then why did you send the entire tribe's food to me? Oakley smiled and said, You are the first beauty of the tribe. Of course you have the priority to choose the food. After you choose, it will be Nina, followed by Sandy and Maya. Gu Mingming raised her head and gestured for him to wait. Why should Nina choose first? Sandy and Maya are also females. They should also be protected and taken care of. Oakley blinked his eyes blankly and replied, Isn't this the order for a normal tribe? The first beauty takes priority, followed by the complete female, followed by the half-orc female, then the cubs. Gu Mingming snorted in disdain, then asked, Are there any cubs in Saint Nazaire? Why didn't I see any? Oakley hung his head and said dejectedly, There should have been. Who knew what Nina was up to? She actually forced Quentin to smash his own nest of eggs. Gu Mingming remembered that Nina had mentioned to Elvis previously, saying that she wanted to prove her fertility was strong before she gave birth to Quentin's cubs. But as the former first beauty of the tribe's first litter of babies, she wanted to leave it to Elvis, so she forced Quentin to smash his own nest of eggs. Thinking about it, it was really perverted. People said that even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs. This Nina was really twisted. Gu Mingming was very resistant to talking about Nina, because she knew that she would not be able to say anything good about Nina. But it was not Gu Mingming's style to speak ill of others behind their backs. If there was something wrong, she would rebuke it in person. Gossiping about others behind their backs was too tasteless. So Gu Mingming clapped her hands and said, Since there are no cubs, the single males can keep the prey for themselves. Tomorrow, I will teach everyone how to marinate meat for better preservation. While the weather is still warm, everyone should store more food, so that you won't starve in winter. As for the females, other than me, the other 3 have their own males. Let their males think of ways to get their own food. Of course, if any female suitor is willing to court my favor, I don't care, but I don't want this privilege. Barit and the other 2 looked at each other. They were so shocked by Gu Mingming's words that they could not say a word. Taking care of the females in the tribe was the responsibility of the males. Suddenly, I will be in charge of Xiaomeng's food. Elvis interrupted. Elvis said, Xiaomeng. Xiaomeng. Elvis said, Xiaomeng. Elvis. Gu Mingming took the food and ate it in small bites. The potatoes were soft and smooth, and after adding salt, they tasted like the best in the world. Forgive her for living for a few days without salt. Gu, and Xiao, Gu. Elvis said. He also took a bite of the cooked one, but he could only politely decline. Xiao to. Xiao tomorrow I wolf. Xiao to Xiao Cole. Xiao, to. Xiao, and said, Xiao. Colin was sneakily stuffing an uncooked potato into his mouth. Being called out by Barit, he blushed and passed the potato in his hand to Gu Mingming, then nodded and said, "Yeah, I'll go with Barit tomorrow." Out of topic. Thank you to QQ Reading Ruyue, Xian, Qingfeng, 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 and Qingfeng for their tips. Recently, I've had a bad cold and made a lot of low-level mistakes in my writing, such as typing wrong names, typing wrong words, etc. Thank you for your understanding and help. I'll try my best to correct them. And then, the author has a heart of glass. When he's sick, he's especially pretentious. So for the next few days, please praise him and bear with the criticism. You can criticize me after I've recovered from my cold. I've been very fragile recently and need love. Chapter 186. Oakley, who was trying his best to familiarize himself with Gu Mingming, fell into a rare silence. He stared at Gu Mingming for a moment before asking, "Do you really have a way to store food without spoiling it?" Gu Mingming turned around and without much thought, she replied with a yeah. She even nodded her head. Oakley asked again, "Do you really want to teach everyone this method?" Gu Mingming nodded again and said, "Yeah, why?" Oakley remained silent for a moment before saying, "Do you know how effective a method to store food can be if used properly?" Gu Mingming thought for a moment before replying, "Everyone can store more food in advance, so that they won't have to suffer during winter. I have been hearing Sandy complain about starving during winter every day, and my ears are already growing calluses. If I teach everyone this method, Sandy will have food to eat during winter, and my ears will be saved. Yeah, this effect is really awesome. Come, there should be applause here." Gu Mingming said as she took the lead to clap. The four males did not know what applause was, but they also imitated her stiffly and clapped their hands. Only after Gu Mingming made a keep hand gesture in satisfaction did Oakley dare to continue speaking. Winter is also known as the season of death. Many orcs die during winter every year. If you can store food without spoiling it for the entire winter, you will be the god of this world, and it will not be a problem for you to unify the entire beast world. But you just taught this method to everyone so easily, just so that you don't have to listen to Sandy's nagging? Gu Mingming looked at Oakley's shocked and bewildered face, and could not help but find it funny. She shrugged her shoulders, and sent the potato into her mouth after blowing on it to cool it down. She savored the sweet and soft taste and smacked her lips. After thinking about it carefully, she opened her eyes in satisfaction and answered Oakley, "I am not Qin Shi Huang and have no interest in unifying the world. I just hope that everyone I care about can live a little more happily. If the knowledge I know can achieve this goal, then I will be very satisfied. Moreover, the purpose of knowledge is to be spread and used. It is not a custom-made S&M underwear that can be hidden and ridiculed." Oakley did not say a word. Actually, he was already very confused when he accompanied Gu Mingming to collect honey previously. Fire was brought by the messengers of the beast deity 1,000 years ago. It symbolized absolute power and sacred authority. At that time, only the messenger's tribe had the right to protect the sacred fire. Once someone or tribe disobeyed, the flame devil would punish them without mercy. So even after 1,000 years, even though the sacred fire in the tribe of the messengers of the beast deity had long been extinguished, and no one knew how to light a fire anymore, the messengers of the beast deity tribe still maintained a high level of authority in the beast world, and very few people dared to defy them. But Gu Mingming actually used that sacred fire to roast meat, smoke yellow needleworms, boil water to cook, and even let Elvis and Leah teach the entire tribe how to use fire, and how to prevent the flame of hope from turning into a flame devil. Now, she had taken out a method that could easily control the food storage in the beast world, and shared it with everyone so casually. A quiet voice was awakening in Oakley's mind. Could it be that Gu Mingming? Oakley was shocked by his own thoughts. He stared at Gu Mingming in bewilderment. The expression on his face was really complicated. To Gu Mingming, it looked like she had seen a ghost. Aside from the topic, thank you, QQ Reading Baby, for your 399 points of view. The song is over, the ending is not beautiful. Sorry, I don't know how to type the special symbol in your name. I realized that there are a lot of tycoons among my babies. Thank you, thank you. I saw some readers complaining about my slow progress and asked why I am not getting to the main topic. Although I don't know what topic you want, let me give you a short-term schedule. Current mission: storing food, killing someone, survive the winter. Chapter 187. Gu Mingming looked at Oakley's expression, as if he had bumped into a ghost, and felt it was rather funny. Everyone had their own ambitions. Was it not enough? Must everyone have the same wish? Gu Mingming turned back to look at Elvis and asked, "Do you want to unify the beast world?" Elvis looked into Gu Mingming's eyes and frowned slightly, as if he had fallen into an intense struggle. After a long while, he opened his mouth and asked, "Unify the beast world, what's the price?" Gu Mingming thought for a moment and replied, "Probably because of loneliness. Everyone who stands at the peak and looks down on everyone else would find it hard to have anyone by their side. So in history, all the rulers would call themselves loners, loners who have no one to rely on. No one can be trusted, and no one can be relied on. Your son might suddenly stretch out his sharp claws to you on a sunny afternoon, or your wife might suddenly strangle your neck in the dead of night, not to mention your best friend. This is the price of power. It's very cruel but very real. If you want to have something, you have to give something. This is life." Looking at Gu Mingming's dramatic interpretation, Elvis suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. As if he had thought through something, he scooped the dancing Gu Mingming into his arms with a faint smile, and rubbed the tip of his nose against her little face, saying, "I'm not interested in unifying the beast world. I'm more interested to know what kind of price I have to pay to get you." Gu Mingming choked on Elvis's sudden confession and bounced up out of reflex. She laughed dryly and said, "Why don't we talk about the 10,086 ways to unify the beast world?" Oakley felt helpless. It turned out that their ambitious tribe leader, Elvis, was also this unambitious after meeting his beloved female. But why did he suddenly feel so envious? Oakley laughed at himself. He had already guessed Gu Mingming's identity, and he was very clear that it was a fool's dream for a first-level orc like him to become her male. As long as he could do something for her, it would be the highest honor. With this in mind, Oakley collected his emotions and said, "Then I'll look for Bode tomorrow to gather more yellow sauce. For Sandy, I don't think he will reject me." Upon hearing that, Gu Mingming's eyes lit up, and she nodded her head in agreement. She thought for a while and said, "Remember, don't take away all of their honeycombs. Do some good deeds and leave half for them." Oakley did not understand the logic behind it, but since it was Gu Mingming who said it, he did not raise any objections, and just nodded in agreement. After Barit and the other two left, Elvis cleaned up the cutlery and returned to the cave. He automatically transformed into a wolf and laid on the beast skin mat as a warm blanket. Gu Mingming originally did not have any psychological pressure towards Elvis in his original form, but his sudden confession today made her feel rather embarrassed. Elvis did not give Gu Mingming too much time to argue. He used his claws to tug, and Gu Mingming fell into his arms. He used his front claws to hold Gu Mingming in place. Then, he placed his chin on her head and closed his eyes. Elvis slept soundly, but Gu Mingming could not. King pervert. Where are you putting your claws? My 36D became your mousepad just like that. Gu Mingming gritted her teeth and prepared to use the aura she used to deal with the pervert on the bus to teach this pervert a lesson. But when she looked up, she met Elvis's blue eyes. That disdainful look and his sharp fangs could be seen clearly from such a close distance. Actually, it was quite good for Elvis to be like this, right? Thinking from another angle, maybe it was her 36D that had taken advantage of Elvis's front claws, right? Aside from the topic, following little baby's request, I wrote a small drama. Actually, I'm not very good at it, but I'll give it a try. Gu Mingming. Elvis, I misjudged you. You are a pervert. Elvis, yeah, black. Gu Mingming was furious. She pointed at the entrance of the cave and shouted, "Get lost." Elvis smiled calmly and pounced over to press Gu Mingming down. He said, "Let's do it step by step, all right?" Gu Mingming was dumbfounded. She asked, How? How do we do it by step? Chapter 188. The next morning, Gu Mingming was woken up by a loud noise. Turning left and right, Gu Mingming almost plucked out all the hair on Elvis's stomach, but still could not block her ears. Jumping up from Elvis's arms like a carp, Gu Mingming rushed out of the cave with a strong smell of waking up. She rolled up her sleeves and scolded. Damn it! Disturbing my sleep is like killing my parents. It's an irreconcilable feud. I want to see who is the one who wants to die and disturbs my sleep. With Gu Mingming's roar, the outside of the cave instantly became silent. But it was too late for silence, because Gu Mingming had already rushed out with a pair of sleep-deprived eyes. The first thing she saw was Nina's face, which was getting more and more detestable by the day. Without saying a word, Gu Mingming went up and grabbed Nina's beast-skin dress, throwing her over her shoulder onto the ground. She flipped over and rode on her, raising her hand to hit her. This time, Nina was not her usual self. She did not provoke or retaliate, but wailed loudly. Hit me, just hit me to death. It's better than having no food and starving to death in my own cave without anyone knowing. Sob, sob, sob. Gu Mingming, what exactly are you planning? Are you here to destroy Saint Nazir? Do you want all the females in the tribe to starve to death? Sob, sob. I can't live past this winter anyway, rather than starving to death. Why don't you just kill me now? Her crying stunned Gu Mingming. This time, it was not because of Leah. Gu Mingming dusted her hands and stood up. The lack of sleep made her extremely irritable. So she kicked Nina, who was rolling on the ground, and said, cry again, and I'll cut off your damn tongue. Frightened by Gu Mingming, Nina immediately kept quiet and covered her mouth with both her hands. She did not know if she was afraid of making a sound or to protect her own tongue, but she just stared straight at Gu Mingming with a pair of cross-eyed eyes while covering her mouth. Gu Mingming made a gesture of stabbing her eyes and said, look again, and I'll dig out your eyes. Nina was so frightened that she hurriedly closed her eyes tightly, showing an inexplicable wretched and funny look. Gu Mingming really could not bring herself to smile at Nina. She just frowned impatiently and said, if you have something to say, just say it. You came here early in the morning to make a scene. Apart from wanting to get beaten up, do you have any higher level of pursuit? Nina covered her mouth and stammered something. It was as if she was talking while brushing her teeth. Who could hear her clearly? Gu Mingming went up and slapped her hand away. With a cold face she said, speak properly, scram after you're done. Nina felt wronged, but she did not dare to cry. She knew that with one word from Gu Mingming, Elvis would definitely pull out her tongue. So she replied while sobbing, why didn't you allow the males to give me their food? It's fine if you don't want it, but why can't I want it? After all, I'm a precious complete female. If I starve to death, do you know what kind of loss it would be to Saint Nazir? Gu Mingming used her hand to cover her ears. She snorted in disgust, scaring Nina so much that she immediately shut her mouth. She looked at Gu Mingming and Elvis, who was already standing behind Gu Mingming with a face as black as a dark cloud. Looking into Elvis's eyes, Nina truly felt that a bolt of lightning could shoot out from Elvis's eyes at any time and strike her to death. Aside from the topic, because the effect of the recommendation this time was very good, QQ Bookstore has decided to add me as a recommendation. December 15th to December 19th is the recommendation period. According to the editor's request, I will add updates at a speed of 5 times a day. This recommendation is inseparable from the fact that my babies vote for me, leave messages and chase after my articles every day. Thank you babies for your support. I hope my babies will continue to work hard during the recommendation period. Try your best to ask QQ Bookstore, and don't forget to vote and leave messages. Chapter 189. Gu Mingming looked at the males standing at the outskirts of Elvis's territory, with large amounts of meat in their hands, as well as Sandy and Maya, who were standing beside her. She did not answer Nina's question, but walked to Sandy and tidied her torn clothes and messy short hair. She sighed and said, you are a bear after all, Why do you always look like you are in a worse state every time you fight with Nina? Don't tell me Nina's original form is a tiger or a lion. Sandy was more or less influenced by Gu Mingming recently, and was no longer that afraid of Nina. Especially now that Gu Mingming was around, she became even more daring. She snorted at Nina and rolled her eyes before looking at Gu Mingming and said, "What lion or tiger? She is just a pheasant. She obviously can't fly, yet she still claims that she is a bird." Previously, she used the fact that Quentin was the only male in Saint Nazaire who could fly, so she swaggered around and made many unreasonable requests. But Leah and Elvis saw that she was a complete female, and Quentin was indeed capable, so they satisfied her. Now that Quentin can't fly, and she no longer has the title of the first beauty in the tribe, she still wants to bully others. "I won't tolerate it anymore." Gu Mingming nodded her head in relief, then patted Sandy's shoulder and said, "That's right. But next time, when you beat her up again, just transform and slap her to death with your bare paw. Don't give her a chance to whine, it's too noisy, understand?" Sandy blinked her eyes and looked at Gu Mingming, then at Elvis, before saying softly, "Saint Nazaire has a rule that we cannot kill our own tribesmen." Gu Mingming chuckled and said, "When I said slap her to death, I was describing her to death, not really asking you to break her to death. It's not good to dirty your own hands, but breaking an arm or a leg is still possible. Isn't winter coming soon? Treat it as an additional dish." Once she said that, not only Nina, even Sandy looked at Gu Mingming with a horrified expression. Gu Mingming glanced at Nina, whose face had turned green from fright, thinking that this girl would not dare to casually provoke Sandy in the future. Then, he changed the topic and pulled Sandy's little hand to ask, "Do you also think that I'm wrong to tell the single males not to share food with the females?" Sandy shook his head and said, "I don't know what's right and what's wrong. I only know that I'll listen to what you say." Gu Mingming chuckled. She could not deny that Sandy's blind worship of Gu Mingming had fully satisfied her vanity, and this trust made Gu Mingming feel even more warm. Gu Mingming held Sandy's little hand and turned to look at Maya. "What about you? What do you think?" Maya was a little timid, but obviously did not dare to express her true thoughts. She just bit her lower lip and moved closer to Gu Mingming, whispering, "I believe you won't harm us. I'll listen to you." Gu Mingming nodded before turning back to face Nina. She smiled sarcastically and said, "So you're the only one who has an opinion?" Nina hardened her heart. This matter concerned the food for the winter. Even if she was afraid of Gu Mingming beating her, she could not back down. So she nodded her head firmly, silently imagining how tragic she must look at that moment. She was like a lone island in the vast ocean, not backing down no matter how the waves hit her. She must look extremely beautiful. All the males would instantly feel pity and admiration for her at that moment. However, she neglected an objective fact. That was wherever Gu Mingming was, other than her own partners, no one would even look at her. Aside from the topic, regarding the question about Nina's original form, I saw all sorts of answers in the comments. The correct answer has been announced. Is there anyone who guessed correctly? Chapter 190. Gu Mingming hugged her shoulders and leaned into Elvis's arms. She leaned against Elvis's chest and stood there quietly without saying a word. "If you are unhappy, you can choose to leave Saint Nazaire," Elvis said coldly from above. Gu Mingming's lips curled up slightly. She had to admit that Elvis's attitude of standing firmly on her side, without asking for right or wrong, pleased her. Of course, she knew what a female meant to a tribe, and she would not give up on a female so easily. Even if it was Nina, didn't she endure for so long for the development of Saint Nazaire? However, reasoning was one thing, and attitude was another. Gu Mingming had never liked to cause trouble for others. Since Elvis supported her unconditionally, she naturally would not make things difficult for him. So Gu Mingming gave Nina a way out of the embarrassing situation. Or you can ask your males to learn how to marinate meat with everyone else, so that you can store enough food before winter arrives. Nina did not say a word. She just bit her lower lip and shook her head fiercely before taking a few steps to the side. Gu Mingming watched as the troublesome fellow walked away. She then waved at everyone, indicating that they could bring their own meat over. Although the males were not as orderly as the People's Liberation Army, they still stood in an orderly manner. They maintained a shoulder's distance from each other in front of Gu Mengmeng and waited for her next instruction. Gu Mengmeng took out the salt crystals that Elvis had crushed into powder and demonstrated how to marinate meat. Then, she pointed at the small mountain of salt crystals piled up in the open space and asked everyone to marinate it according to their own method. After everyone was done marinating, she then taught everyone how to use tree branches and vines to dry the meat in the shade. After explaining everything, Gu Mengmeng and Sandy interspersed themselves in between the males to give them appropriate guidance and correction. Although the males could not understand this strange method, how would they have the chance to interact so closely with the females? Just for this, it was worth it to starve to death during winter. What's more, these things were originally meant for the 4 females in the tribe, but now they had become his reserve rations. It was already good enough to have something to eat during the winter. Whether it tasted good or not, in fact, was not that important. Thus, the group of people began to marinate the meat in full swing, and then hung it up to dry. Everything seemed to be in order. Bah! The discordant voice sounded again. Gu Mengmeng did not even need to turn her head to know that the hoarse voice was Nina's doing. She looked back sharply and saw Nina spitting something on the ground, pointing at Quentin and scolding. "Why are you being picky? It was disgusting. This is simply a waste of food. Don't you know that I already have very little food this winter? Are you trying to starve me to death?" Gu Mengmeng wanted to speak up, but Sandy had told her not to interfere with other people's family matters. Zhou Yu was beating up Huang Gai. One was willing to take the beating while the other was willing to take the beating. What right did she have to say anything? Thus, Gu Mengmeng forced herself to pretend that she did not hear Nina's indirect scolding and continued to guide the other males to marinate the meat. Seeing that Gu Mengmeng did not have any reaction, Nina gave herself a thumbs up in her heart, feeling that she had the upper hand this time. But considering Gu Mengmeng's usual behavior of not making a fuss if she could make a move, Nina decided to stop while she was ahead. Thus, she shook her plump buttocks, and one of her partners transformed into a beast for her to ride on. She said with her nose facing the sky, "Let's go home. Don't waste the food here. If you have the time, hurry up and help me catch more prey. What are you wasting time for, humph?" Aside from the topic, many times the males say that we are pretentious. But what we are doing is just to see your accommodating attitude. When a girl is crying, no amount of reasoning is as effective as a hug. Chapter 191. Without Nina messing around, the pickling process went smoothly. Gu Mengmeng and Sandy brought Maya along to sit at the side and chat. It was around noon when Barit and Colin came back. The two of them were almost buried by the potatoes. From afar, it looked like 2 piles of potatoes had turned into spirits and were walking towards them. After they put down the potatoes, Colin walked towards Gu Mengmeng with a red face. He took out something from behind and passed it to Gu Mengmeng. "This was accidentally plucked when I was plucking the potatoes. I've tried it, and it's very delicious too. Do you want it?" Gu Mengmeng's eyes brightened. She patted Colin's shoulder. "Not bad, Colin. You even managed to find it. Where did you find it? Are there many?" Seeing that Gu Mengmeng liked it, Colin smiled till his eyes were squinted. He scratched his head. "It's just beside the potato field. It's not too far away. It's not as many as the potatoes, but it's not too little either." Gu Mengmeng held onto Colin's hand excitedly. "Bring me to take a look, all right?" Colin's face turned even redder. He turned his face to the other side. He lowered his head and peeked at Gu Mengmeng from the corner of his eyes. Then he nodded. Gu Mengmeng was so happy that she jumped on the spot. She leaped onto Elvis. "Elvis, let's go pluck some sweet potatoes." Elvis naturally followed Gu Mengmeng's wishes. He brought her towards the direction of the potato field. Barit followed behind them. As Colin was busy taking deep breaths, he walked slightly later. Just as he was about to leave, he realized that a corner of his beast-skin dress was being pinched by Sandy. Colin tilted his head and looked at Sandy. "Why? You want to eat it too?" Then I'll discuss it with Gu Mingming. She's so close to you. She'll definitely be willing to share it with you. Sandy shook her head. She forced a smile. I won't snatch Gu Mingming's things. Colin did not say a word. He wanted to leave. But when he saw that Sandy was still tugging on the corner of his dress, he asked, Then do you have anything else? Sandy bit her lower lip and said, I fought with Nina again today. Colin chuckled and said, I've heard about this. I feel that Gu Mingming is still right. You have to bring out Gu Mingming's strength and send Nina flying with a slap. Let's see if she still dares to make a fuss next time. That's why Gu Mingming is the first beauty of the tribe. She has a beautiful heart too. It's really nice no matter how I look at her. Sandy slowly loosened his grip and nodded with a smile. Yes, you're right. I'm fine now. Hurry and bring Gu Mingming to find that mud ball. She seems to like it very much. Who knows if she's happy? You can stay in Elvis's cave this winter. Hearing this, Colin's heart, which had finally calmed down, started beating again. He patted Sandy's shoulder and said with a silly smile, What are you talking about? I don't dare to think like that. Sandy looked at his shoulder, which had turned red from the patting, and laughed bitterly in his heart. He sighed and said, Look at you, you can't even see your eyes from smiling. You still don't dare to think about it? You must be thinking so much that you're going crazy, right? Hurry and chase after her. If you don't, Gu Mingming will be far away. Hearing Sandy's words, Gu Mingming then realized that Elvis had already brought Gu Mingming far away. She smacked her head and said, I won't say any more. I'm going to lead the way for Gu Mingming. Looking at Colin, who was running away in a hurry, Sandy's originally smiling lips slowly pursed into a straight line. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she stubbornly refused to let them fall. She placed her chubby little hand on her left chest and murmured to Colin's back view, I won't snatch Gu Mingming's things. I won't snatch Gu Mingming's things. Aside from the topic. Sigh. Colin is such a blockhead. Sometimes I really feel that he deserves to be single. She thought of a story. A girl asked a guy to watch a movie, then reminded him, Remember to bring your identification card. Then the guy used 2 hours to tell the girl not to check her identification card when watching a movie. Chapter 192. When Gu Mingming followed Colin to the sweet potato field, she felt that her life was too blissful. Staple food, this was the damn staple food. She shook Elvis's arm in agitation and pointed at the sweet potato field, unable to say a word. Elvis rubbed Gu Mingming's little head lovingly, then turned back slightly and gave a signal. The group of males behind him all stepped forward and started plucking the sweet potatoes. Why a group? Haha. Everyone heard Sandy and Colin's conversation. Who wouldn't want to seize this opportunity to perform well? If they could really gain Gu Mingming's favor before winter, that would be the pinnacle of their lives. Even if they could not, it would be glorious to be able to serve the first beauty of the tribe. For the entire afternoon, Gu Mingming was in charge of sitting in Elvis's arms and smiling foolishly, then watching everyone transport the sweet potatoes that were as tall as a hill back to Saint Nazaire. Under Gu Mingming's insistence, the sweet potato leaves were also brought back. When they returned to Saint Nazaire, Oakley and Bode had already returned and were distributing the honey they had gathered into bowls and basins in Gu Mingming's house. Sandy was following behind Bode with her eyes full of hearts, stealing a mouthful of the honey that Bode secretly gave her from time to time. Gu Mingming happily went forward to greet them, then took out a clean sweet potato for Sandy. Sandy took over the sweet potato and took a bite without saying anything, then exclaimed in surprise, So sweet! Gu Mingming pointed behind her with her thumb, then turned her body sideways and Sandy saw the sweet potatoes that were as tall as a hill. She hugged Gu Mingming happily and jumped high on the spot. Gu Mingming said, I definitely can't finish all these by myself. You and Maya should also bring some back to store during winter. I will share the rest with the males in the tribe. The males in the tribe were all stunned. Since ancient times, only males would find food for females. There had never been a male who ate the food brought back by a female. Even though none of these things were plucked by Gu Mingming herself, they still belonged to Gu Mingming. Sandy was also unhappy. She dug her lips and said, "We already don't eat the prey brought back by the males this winter. Can't we just split it among the three of us?" Gu Mingming found it funny and asked, "So much, it's at least 1,000 pounds, can you finish it?" Sandy looked at the sweet potatoes and thought back to the crispy taste just now. She swallowed her saliva and nodded. Gu Mingming facepalmed and laughed helplessly. "You little glutton, aren't you afraid your heart will burn from eating sweet potatoes the whole winter? Don't you want to eat the fish and meat we've preserved?" Looking at the water shuttles and various kinds of meat hanging on the tree, Sandy blinked her eyes and rubbed her stomach. "Then I can give them a little, but only a little." Gu Mingming smiled. "All right, I'll give them a little." Maya walked to Gu Mingming and asked timidly, "Gu Mingming, I don't want the sweet potato. Can you give me some of that leaf?" Gu Mingming turned around and looked at the sweet potato leaves Maya was pointing at, asking, "You like to eat this?" Maya nodded, her eyes full of desire. Gu Mingming agreed readily. "Sure, there's a lot of this. I'll keep some to make soup. You and Sandy can share the rest." Sandy immediately opened her mouth and said, "I don't want the leaves. I'll give you all my leaves in exchange for the sweet potatoes, all right?" Maya nodded, and just like that, the two of them happily came to an agreement. Aside from the topic, I suddenly thought of a song that suited Sandy very well. So hungry, I'm really so hungry. Chapter 193. For the next few days, Gu Mingming was exceptionally busy. The males plucked the potatoes from the potato field in batches and hunted a lot of prey on their way back. Because in the past, everyone would observe the hiding place of their prey and wait until winter when there was no more food to hunt. This would ensure that the food would not rot. But in the past, they had to pay a huge price. It was considered good if one of them could return out of three. But this year, with Gu Mingming's storage method, not only did everyone not need to take risks during winter, they could also hunt during the season when the prey was the fattest. Be it the quality or quantity of the stored food, there was an obvious increase. Meanwhile, another group of people, led by Bode, started to fish in the stream in large batches and dried them in the sun according to Gu Mingming's method. Everything was carried out in an orderly manner until one day, an uninvited guest came to the tribe. Leah, who had not appeared for a long time, once again came to the border of Elvis's territory. He used his unique fox howl to call Elvis out from his territory. Elvis was surprised to see Lee's haggard face. He frowned and said, "Your body won't be able to take it if you keep digging ginger day and night." Leah waved his hands and took out a small basket from his waist. That was the basket that Gu Mingming used to feed rabbits for a few days. That rabbit did not survive in the end, so Leah kept the basket to prevent Gu Mingming from feeling sad when she thought about it. Now it came in handy. He used the basket to fill the basket with ginger and passed it to Elvis. He sighed and said, "I have to do something for her so that I can catch my breath. Or else." Leah lowered his head and stared at his chest, not finishing his sentence. With a deep sigh, Leah shook his head and continued, "I came here today because I have something else to tell you." Elvis and Leah had been through life and death situations for many years. Just by looking at his expression, Elvis knew that what Leah wanted to say was very serious. So Elvis handed the ginger to a male at the side and followed Leah out of his territory to Lee's home. To a certain extent, the witch doctor's territory was even more inviolable than the leader's territory. This was because apart from treating the wounded, this was also the place where the witch doctor and the leader discussed important matters. When the two of them released their powerful auras at the same time, this place became an absolute vacuum. Anyone who approached without permission could be killed without asking for a reason. This was the divine authority that the previous messenger of the beast deity had bestowed upon the witch doctor. Leah leaned against the tree and closed his eyes. He was the first to release his own suppressive force. Elvis was stunned for a moment before following closely behind. After confirming that there was no one else other than them in Lee's territory, Leah then slowly opened his mouth and said, "The fact that Mingming is the messenger of the beast deity can no longer be hidden." Elvis's expression froze as he asked, "What do you mean?" Leah used his chin to point at the moon-white little fox lying at the entrance of his cave and said, Sauter's messenger fox. Its appearance means that Sauter's messenger is on the way to Saint Nazaire and will arrive in a few days. He is telling us to prepare in advance to receive the messenger. Elvis frowned and said with a serious expression, Sauter, is the tribe where the previous messenger of the beast deity descended? Aside from the topic, Gu Mingming, where did you go to fool around just now? Elvis, Gu Mingming, I'm asking you, who were you with just now? Elvis, with Leah. Gu Mingming cupped her heart with one hand and pointed at Elvis with the other trembling. Fooling around with Leah? I knew it. I knew there was something going on between the two of you. You really got together. How could you do this to me? How could you do this? Elvis, Xiaoming, listen to my explanation. Gu Mingming, I don't want to listen, I don't want to listen, I don't want to listen. You didn't even reserve a VIP seat for such an exciting live broadcast. I'm so disappointed in you. Elvis's face darkened. Gu Mingming held onto Elvis's shoulders and said, I won't pursue the details. I just want to ask you one thing. Between you and Leah, who is on the offensive and who is on the defensive? Chapter 194. Leah nodded as a reply. They would not send messengers to Saint Nazaire for no reason. And the only thing worth plotting in Saint Nazaire is... Leah did not finish his sentence, and just looked at Elvis quietly. Elvis remained silent for a moment before saying, Xiaoming has never left the tribe before. How did they know of her identity? Leah smiled faintly. The calm expression on his face was because he had long expected this day to come. No tribe had the ability to hide the existence of the messenger of the beast deity forever. It was only a matter of time before they were exposed. However, when this day arrived, his heart was not as calm as he had expected. Even though he had already predicted countless times how to deal with such a situation before Gu Mingming came. But now, he no longer wanted a 90% chance of success, but a 100% chance of failure. Leah did not answer Elvis's question, only revealing a smile of mutual understanding. His slender and bony hand tapped his arm lightly, raising his head to look at the sky and squinting his eyes, causing his originally faint smile to become even more subtle, almost indiscernible. Winter is about to arrive. Do you think this messenger would be so unlucky to meet with the first snowfall on his way back and forth? The corners of Elvis's lips curled up slightly, revealing an evil and bloodthirsty smile. His blue eyes shone with a cold light as he said, The winter that belongs to him should arrive before he steps into Saint Nazaire. No. Leah stopped Elvis and took a deep breath before continuing. Let him enter the tribe and let him see Gu Mingming. Elvis frowned. He did not question Leah directly, but was obviously waiting for his explanation. Leah was not affected by Elvis's emotions and continued. Gu Mingming brought fire and food to Saint Nazaire. Many people in the tribe have already vaguely guessed her identity. If we continue to hide it for a long time, we will inevitably lose the trust of the people. And it will seem like you, the tribe leader, and me, the witch doctor, do not trust the tribe members. So, we need someone with credibility to help us reveal Gu Mingming's identity. This messenger is the most suitable. Elvis's brows were tightly furrowed. He could not help but admit that Lee's words were right. In order to delay the exposure of Gu Mingming's identity to the greatest extent, they did not tell anyone in the tribe that Gu Mingming was the messenger of the beast deity. But now, far away in Sauter, the messengers of the beast deity tribe. No, it should be said that the people from the former messengers of the beast deity tribe already knew about it. That meant that someone in the tribe had guessed Gu Mingming's identity and leaked it out. Since someone already knew about it, there was no point in continuing to hide it. They might as well publicize Gu Mingming's identity within Saint Nazaire. This way, the people in the tribe would protect Gu Mingming to a higher level, from protecting a precious female to protecting the new messenger of the beast deity. Those were two completely different concepts. But in that case, Gu Mingming's leisurely days would come to an end. The turmoil and fights in the beast world could almost be foreseen. Putting Gu Mingming in the eye of the storm was not something he wished to see. But she was the messenger of the beast deity. Feeling helpless, Elvis nodded his head solemnly and said, I'll leave this matter to you. I'll go back and accompany Xiaoming first. Li's expression was still indifferent as he nodded his head slightly. Until Elvis's back completely disappeared from his sight. Leah then transformed into his half-orc form. He sat cross-legged and hugged his furry big tail in his arms, stroking it from time to time. He looked at his empty arms with empty eyes, imagining that petite person smiling sweetly and saying, Daddy Leah, you're so good-looking. Meng Meng, I miss you so much. Even though he knew that she could not hear him, he still expressed his longing to the air. Aside from the topic, thank you to the little darling HKL on QQ for reminding me. The potato problem was indeed a bug. The potatoes dug out when the potatoes were blooming could not be eaten. So the situation in the novel could not be applied in reality. Let's just treat it as the laws of nature in the beast world being different from the present world. Don't use what you read in the novel to apply it in reality. Chapter 195. In a tribe, the chief had the highest authority, because no one could beat him. Witch doctors represented divine authority that could not be blasphemed. Sometimes they could even override the authority of the chief. But there was one situation that even the tribe leader and witch doctor could not do anything about. And that was when the females of the tribe came together. What they wanted to do. Basically, even if the beast deity himself appeared, he would not be able to do anything about it. And now, Saint Nazir was in such a situation. Out of the 4 females, 3 of them were happily shuttling back and forth in the tribe that was filled with salted meat, potatoes, and sweet potatoes every day. From time to time they would say, Wow, you've salted so much meat. I won't go hungry this winter. And oh my God, you arranged the potatoes and sweet potatoes so neatly. Can you teach my partner? Praise like that. This simply caused the adrenaline of the males in Saint Nazir to soar to an unprecedented high. Everyone put in more effort in hunting to preserve and dig more potatoes and sweet potatoes. And what caused everything to reach a boiling point was that before winter, the foodie Sandy had taken in a new partner, a hyena named Bailey. In the beast world where handsome men were everywhere, Bailey's looks could only be considered average, and his body was not as strong as Barit or Collins. And the reason why Sandy could take a liking to him was because of his sensitive sense of smell, that he was the male who discovered the most new potato fields. In other words, he used a large potato field as a dowry to marry into Sandy's family. In this way, Sandy had 7 companions. On the day of mating, Gu Meng Meng made a huge pot of precious animal farm stew. As the meat was all processed into pieces, Gu Meng Meng did not know whether he had put in a lion or a tiger other than potatoes in the pot. Anyway, when a pot of steaming hot and fragrant farmhouse stew was delivered to the entrance of Sandy's cave, Sandy was smiling so widely that his eyes couldn't be seen. It was rare that he was not in a hurry to eat. He held Gu Meng Meng's hand and asked her to sing dowry again. Gu Meng Meng thought that although it was Sandy's 7th mating, it was still a joyous occasion. There was nothing like a wedding here. As a friend, it was not a big deal for her to sing a song for him. Hence, she cleared her throat and sang Guijing's dowry from start to finish. After singing, she thought that it was time to send the bride and groom off to the bridal chamber. But who knew that Sandy would look up at Bailey and ask, Did you remember what Gu Meng Meng sang just now? Gu Meng Meng, thank you. If you had not discovered that Sandy loves to eat potatoes, I would not have the fortune to mate with her. You are Sandy's good friend and my benefactor. I will be grateful to you for my entire life. I will never dare to complain that you are noisy, and will never dare to be jealous of you. Don't worry. Gu Meng Meng nodded her head hurriedly and bowed 90 degrees to Gu Meng Meng. Gu Meng Meng, thank you. Gu Meng Meng burst into laughter. Why did she feel as if she was Sandy's first partner, and this new little fellow was worshipping her? However, this feeling was not bad. Hence, Gu Meng Meng shook her wrists and did a warm-up action that she always did before hitting Nina. Suppressing her smile, she said in a slightly threatening tone, I can ignore if you complain that I am noisy or are jealous of me. But if you dare to let my Sandy suffer even the slightest grievance, my fists are not to be trifled with. Bailey tilted his head and stared at Gu Mingming's weak fists. He blinked his eyes and did not know what to say. Gu Mingming felt that she was being looked down upon. Hence, she narrowed her eyes and sneered. I will use my fists to instruct Elvis to beat you up so badly. Bailey looked up and saw that Elvis was already standing behind Gu Mingming. He was emitting a domineering aura and staring at him coldly. Goosebumps rose from the bottom of her feet. She did not dare to doubt him anymore and nodded her head in agreement. Aside from the topic, thank you Xian baby for tipping me on QQ reading. I just realized that you have already tipped me to become an apprentice. Congratulations on leveling up. You already have 1,000 fan points and are the second highest among all the fans. Chapter 196. Sandy's mating made the blood of the males in Saint Nazaire boil. Gu Mingming felt a sense of achievement when she saw everyone's enthusiasm. If there were fewer deaths this winter because of her, or even less deaths, then she had not transmigrated for nothing. More or less, she had made some contributions to the beast world. Right? The weather was getting colder. Other than noon, when the sun was at its highest, Gu Mingming could not leave her room. Luckily, Elvis was a tycoon. He knew that Gu Mingming's eyes could not see anything in the dark. So he took out 17 to 18 luminous pearls from the depths of the cave and embedded them on the wall. A luminous pearl's light was actually very dim, but when there were a lot of them, it exuded a hazy sense of beauty. Sometimes, when Gu Mingming opened her eyes, she would feel as if she was in outer space, and the stars were just within her reach, accompanying her. That feeling was very dreamy and unreal, especially when Elvis was in the hazy night light. His devilish aura was magnified by the dim light, and his resolute side under the sunlight was hidden in the darkness. At that moment, he looked a little like a vampire from Western mythology. His long hair draped over his shoulders like black smoke, and his bare chest exuded a strong sense of temptation. Even after looking at him for almost a month, Gu Mingming still could not help blushing and her heart palpitating. As the two of them spent more time alone in the cave, Gu Mingming's immunity towards Elvis showed a negative trend. This made her feel very uneasy. She had just broken up with Leah for less than a month, and she felt that it was an insult to her feelings for Leah to have a new lover so soon. After all, he was her first love. And just when Gu Mingming was in a dilemma, the person who should have come finally came. That afternoon, a fox's howl attracted Elvis's attention. His expression was a little complicated, and when he looked at Gu Mingming, his brows were tightly knitted into a dead knot. Gu Mingming easily sensed Elvis's abnormality and asked, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" Elvis pursed his lips and answered, "The messenger from the previous messenger tribe is here. We have to go and welcome him." Gu Mingming had heard a lot about the messenger of the beast deity from Sandy. She was very interested in the man who was almost deified, even though many of his tricks were fake in the eyes of modern people. But he had successfully fooled everyone in the beast world. This was something that Gu Mingming admired. Once she heard that the messengers from the messenger's tribe had arrived, Gu Mingming's eyes lit up. She jumped into Elvis's arms and wrapped her arms around his neck. "I heard from Sandy that the messenger's tribe is very arrogant. They always look down on people with their noses up high. They actually came to our place today. It's so rare. Bring me to have a look." Elvis's brows never relaxed, because he knew what it meant to take that step out of this cave. Looking at Gu Mingming in his arms, he suddenly felt how good it would be if she was not the messenger of the beast deity. That way, she could live a simple life under his protection and not have to bear so many disputes and troubles. Unfortunately, there were no ifs. Elvis hugged Gu Mingming's waist and kissed her forehead. Then, he chose a thick bear skin and wrapped Gu Mingming up tightly. Before they left, he realized that her little feet were still exposed outside. So he placed her feet into his beast skin dress and used his stomach to warm her up. Everything was ready. Elvis took a deep breath and carried the excited Gu Mingming. Facing the glaring sunlight outside the cave, he walked out. Aside from the topic, "Thank you to the QQ reading baby. Can you give me scissors when my hair reaches my waist for the 399 reading points? Thank you for your support. during the recommendation period. Susu will work harder. At this point, the contents of the first chapter Transmigration to the Beast World was published. The next chapter started, and the contents of the second chapter started. Gu Mingming would not stay in a state where she did not understand the rules. From the next chapter, Gu Mingming's golden finger would slowly open up. Chapter 197. The Center of Saint Nazir. The place where Gu Mingming held her coming-of-age ceremony. The blood-soaked redwood tower had been removed. Now there were many animal furs neatly arranged. They were all tanned and arranged according to the type and pattern of the furs. They were divided into 3 grades: good, medium and poor. On one pile of furs a person sat. He had one foot on the edge of the furs while the other was hanging down casually. Against the light, Gu Mingming could not see that person's face clearly. She just felt that this arrogant sitting posture was very annoying. Damn it! Those furs were to be distributed to the tribesmen to keep them warm during the winter. Hey! Gu Mingming pointed at the male sitting high above and shouted, "Didn't your mother teach you to be polite when visiting someone else's house? Don't touch other people's things?" As if he had never been treated like this before, that person was stunned for a moment. Gu Mingming could clearly see him turning his head. Then his body obviously moved. And then, Gu Mingming did not have the time to see anything else. She only felt Elvis's muscles tensing up while hugging her. He quickly took a step back, and the beast's skin that was wrapped around her was flipped by an external force. It broke into pieces and scattered all over the place. Gu Mingming had no doubt that if Elvis had dodged a little slower, the beast's skin would not be the only thing that broke into pieces. Gu Mingming's anger flared up immediately. She pointed at that person's nose and scolded, "Are you a freaking rabies patient, or did you just run out from Qingshan Mental Hospital?" At the same time, Gu Mingming was surrounded by over 20 males from Saint Nazir. They were all prepared to attack, glaring at that person like a tiger watching its prey, while blocking Elvis and Gu Mingming behind them. Attacking a female from a tribe, no matter what your status was equivalent to declaring war on the tribe. This was the rule of the beast world. You are Gu Mingming. That person did not care about the males blocking in front of him at all. But when he saw Gu Mingming's face, his eyes suddenly lit up. His gaze was naked and obvious as he sized her up with obvious greed. Gu Mingming sneered. "Is this a situation where you can ask questions? Are you a little confused about the situation?" The man coldly glanced at the males in front of him and snorted. "That's right. I should at least clean up the trash here and create a comfortable environment for the beautiful females to talk in." As he spoke, he gently licked the back of his hand, and his fingernails grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. His movements were like a cat's, but more bewitching. Gu Mingming felt that this action was extremely familiar, but she could not recall where she had seen it before. In the blink of an eye, screams rang out. The males in front of Elvis and Gu Mingming rolled on the ground at an unbelievable speed. Every single one of them had wounds of varying degrees. It was not fatal, but it made it difficult for them to stand up again. Moreover, each of them had an obvious wound on their arteries. It was obvious that they were going to bleed to death. Gu Mingming frowned. Was this person a freaking psychopathic killer? "Damn you!" Gu Mingming scolded and rolled up her sleeves, ready to charge forward. Elvis hugged her tightly and tilted her chin with one hand, turning her angry little face towards him. Then, he looked into her eyes and said, "Tell me, do you want him to be crippled or dead?" Aside from the topic, thank you to the little darling Mao061028 from Xiaoxiang Academy for voting for this article. And thank you to the little darling Iwuyo from QQ Book City for tipping 399 reading points. Chapter 198. Gu Mingming rolled up half of her sleeves and pointed at the man who was smiling in a weird manner. Beat him to death." "All right." Elvis placed Gu Mingming down and kissed her forehead lightly. The moment he turned around, his murderous aura was released, and he walked towards the messenger from the tribe of the messengers of the beast deity step by step. Gu Mingming did not stay idle either. She casually picked up a piece of beast skin and ran to the nearest injured person. She asked him to use his sharp claws to help her tear the beast's skin into strips. Then, she tied the wound tightly from the side closest to the heart to stop the bleeding in an emergency. Gu Mingming could not even call out the name of this casualty, who was lying on the ground, but she remembered his face. During this period of time when they were digging potatoes, sweet potatoes and bacon, they always had some pleasant moments together. Gu Mingming, I'm sorry I'm too weak. Blood gushed out from his wound, but that male lowered his head, as if he could not feel the pain. He did not dare to look at Gu Mingming's eyes, as if he was ashamed and annoyed at the same time, as if he had done something unforgivable. Gu Mingming still could not agree with the unspoken rule of being weak is wrong. Death is what you deserve in the beast world. She slapped his shoulder hard and said, Don't let your imagination run wild, you're very brave. You clearly knew you couldn't beat him. But didn't you still stand in front of me? You're the brave warrior of Saint Nazir. I'm proud of you. Heal your wounds first. It's not too late to seek revenge on him after you've raised your abilities. Yeah. The male nodded his head resolutely and did not say any more self-deprecating words. Gu Mingming was just about to handle the second casualty when her hands felt lighter. Leave it to me. Leah took over the beast's skin from Gu Mingming's hands. His actions were as smooth as flowing water without any hesitation. Gu Mingming sighed. No matter what kind of grudge she had with Leah, she had to put it aside in front of the enemy. Nothing was more important than saving the lives of her tribesmen, not having to worry about the injured anymore. Gu Mingming then turned her attention back to Elvis and that messenger. Both of them seemed to be on par with each other and were in a stalemate. Gu Mingming observed carefully for a long time and came to the conclusion that Elvis was a practical fighter. His attacks were all accumulated from actual battles, and every move was very solid. As long as he managed to land a hit, that messenger would probably not be able to get up. On the other hand, the messenger's movements were light and agile. She was able to avoid Elvis's attacks every single time and counterattack with each move. Moreover, his moves were very sinister. They were all moves that targeted the opponent's vitals. Chapter 199. When Gu Mingming approached Elvis and the messenger who were fighting step by step with the torch in her hand, the messenger was stunned. It was as if he did not dare to believe his own eyes and could only stare at Gu Mingming's little face that was illuminated red by the fire. Her smile was so sly and quick-witted that he did not need any other evidence. At that moment, he had already deeply believed that this breathtakingly beautiful female was the new messenger of the beast deity. He was in a daze and Elvis would not be courteous to him. He punched his chin, and a tooth flew out of his mouth along with blood. The messenger fell backwards and a black whirlpool appeared in front of him. But even so, he continued to stare at Gu Mingming's direction with an indescribable expression. It was just a little wretched and ferocious. Gu Mingming patted Elvis's arm and said, Thank you for your hard work, tribe leader. Leave the rest to me. Elvis looked at the messenger, who could not get up from the ground, and did not say a word. He just quietly took half a step back and maintained a distance where he could snap his neck before Gu Mingming was hurt if that fellow made any sudden movements. He let Gu Mingming vent her anger on him. Great messenger. Gu Mingming squatted beside the messenger and sneered at his mouth that was still dripping blood. She squinted her eyes and sneered. By right, you have come from afar, and we should be welcoming you with great hospitality. But you are really too rude. It makes me feel really uncomfortable. Gu Mingming did not give the messenger a chance to speak at all. She twirled her slender fingers in the flame a few times, and saw the shocked expression on the messenger's face from the corner of her eyes. She thought to herself in disdain, You ignorant country bumpkin. I learned these two tricks from a magician when I was doing a part-time job at the amusement park. It might not even work on little kids at my place, but in front of you, it's considered amazing, right? Seeing that the messenger's eyes were almost popping out, Gu Mingming snorted in disdain and continued, There are a few debts that we have to settle properly. Gu Mingming casually held onto the beast's skin that she was originally draped over her body and that was now torn into rags. She said, "This beast's skin was personally sewn by my mother when I was born." "Aya, you broke it just like that. Tell me, how are you going to compensate me?" That messenger shuddered at Gu Mingming's words. No matter how cunning he was still limited by his knowledge, and did not know what faking an accident was. Gu Mingming usually did not bother to do such things, but she was really too angry today. Was there a need to follow the rules of the pugilistic world when dealing with such a lunatic? "I'm sorry. Gu Mingming has always been someone who will return 10 times the kindness you have shown me. But if you dare to bully me, then I'll pay you back 100-fold and demand 10,000 years of interest. I will hunt 10 to return to you." The messenger's mouth was full of blood, and he could not even speak clearly. When he opened his mouth, blood splattered onto Gu Mingming's face. Gu Mingming frowned in disgust. "Ha, this is a gift from the beast deity. How are you going to hunt 10 of them and return them to me? Didn't your mother give it to you?" The messenger's tongue went numb, and his brain was still buzzing. It was not that he was smart, but Gu Mingming's words had too many loopholes. However, Gu Mingming burst out laughing. She moved her mouth close to the messenger's ear, as if she was whispering to him. She did not lower her volume and said word by word, "You didn't hear me clearly, did you? What I said was that this was personally sewn by my mother, and the person who gave me this beast skin is the beast deity. Aside from the topic, thank you Meng Baby and Qingwan for your tips. Both of you wanted to bribe me. Yeah, I'll accept the bribe. I will carefully consider both of your requests. Also, let's do an advertisement. Our QQ group number is 4927792773 sometimes. Not only will your messages be deleted, my messages will also be deleted." I replied to a few of my baby's messages in the book city, but they all disappeared when I refreshed the page. I'm in despair too. Well, everyone can join this group. Every day, I will try my best to spend some time chatting with everyone in the group. Occasionally, I will send red packets or something. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.